Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue with speaking about Ibrahim alayhi salam and of course the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam and all those details that have to do with his life. But before that, I just want to talk about the fundraiser coming up, inshallah ta'ala, this coming Saturday. I'm inviting all you guys to come and join us, inshallah. The tickets are really cheap, alhamdulillah. It's basically just for a family of four, it's $50, and for a single person it's $20. I mean, you can't really get better than that. And of course, it's to support the masjid, support the community. We normally have our yearly masjid fundraisers, so if you have not gotten any tickets, you can get them as soon as possible, inshallah ta'ala. They're on sale. All right, so let's get started. So last time we were here, we spoke about Ibrahim alayhi salam, and we spoke about the debate that Ibrahim alayhi salam had with the ruler of Babylon at that time, Nimrod, right? Nimrod. So after Ibrahim alayhi salam, after he debated with this ruler, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ, that the disbeliever was dumbfounded. He was just shocked at the answer of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We spoke about that short debate. After this, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he left Babylon. Right? He left Babel, which is in the modern times the land of Iraq and that general area. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he left that area, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions in the Quran فَآمَنَ لَهُ لُوط, that Lut alayhi salam believed in Ibrahim. So in the family of Ibrahim alayhi salam, you had Ibrahim alayhi salam, and from his family, his nephew Lut believed in him. And Lut alayhi salam is going to have his own session. We're going to talk about Lut alayhi salam and the people of Sodom, the people that were engaged in all sorts of impermissible actions. And Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions that Lut believed in him. وَقَالَ إِنِّي مُهَاجِرٌ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي. Lut alayhi salam, he said that I will go and make a migration towards my Lord. And then Lut alayhi salam, he says, إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ, he is the mighty and he is the wise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that how he has blessed Ibrahim alayhi salam in the next verse. And this is from Surah Al-Ankabut. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, Lut, and a couple other family members, they left Babel and they traveled towards a place called Asham. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ وَلُوطًا إِلَى الْأَرْضِ الَّتِي بَارَكْنَا فِيهَا لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and we saved him, right? We saved him as well as Lut. We saved him, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as well as Lut, and we delivered them to a place which we have blessed for all of the worlds. And this is a place where that is called Asham. Now, anytime you read the books of Hadith, anytime you read the books of Islamic history, and you find the term Sham, what does that refer to? What is Asham? Yeah, Syria, right? So that area of Syria, we're talking like Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. That area is Asham. Right? So anytime you hear the word Asham in any hadith or lecture or story, know that that's the area that we're talking about. So Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu and others of the Mufassirun, the early Mufassirun, Ubay radiallahu anhu is a Sahabi. He said that when Allah Azza wa Jalla says that we delivered Lut and Ibrahim to a blessed land, that refers to Asham. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he left with his family. Now, did Ibrahim alayhi salam, was he married already? Did he marry his wife in Babel and then he migrated with his wife, or did he meet his wife in Asham? Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala mentions that there's some different opinions. But the point is that he was married. And his wife's name, what was his wife's name? Sarah, right? So his wife's name was Sarah. So he was married to Sarah, so it was he, his wife Sarah, and Lut alayhi salam, alayhim salam, they traveled to Asham and they settled there. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam, what he did is that he settled in Palestine, in Baytul Maqdis, in Jerusalem. So he settled there with Lut alayhi salam and with Sarah alayhi salam, and he settled there and he lived there for years. Now what happened is that Ibrahim alayhi salam commanded Lut alayhi salam to leave Baytul Maqdis, to leave Philistine, and to go travel to Sodom, right? And then the whole story will unfold concerning what's going to happen with Lut alayhi salam and the homosexuality and his people. And we're going to talk about that in the other session, inshallah. Now what happens with Lut alayhi salam is that Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions that some of the historians, what they say is that Lut, when he traveled and when Ibrahim alayhi salam told him to leave, Lut alayhi salam, he was imprisoned. There were some tyrants and they imprisoned him. And when they imprisoned him, they put a lot of pressure on him, and eventually news came to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Now when the news came to Ibrahim alayhi salam, he gathered about a little over 318, as Ibn Kathir mentions, people, soldiers, and they all went out to where Lut alayhi salam was imprisoned, and they fought and they brought him back. So it was literally like a rescue mission. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, sometimes when you read about his story, you don't read certain things like this, right? Allahu A'lam, even if you're going to find it in the English stories of the prophets by Ibn Kathir, right? You know the stories of the prophets, the English one that's been printed, there's a lot of things, a lot of details that are kind of like omitted. All right, it's kind of like a summarized version. So Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions this. Now, Ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, he also mentions that when Ibrahim was in Bayt al-Maqdis, when he was in Jerusalem, there was a drought. And people were having a very hard time in Jerusalem. Now what he did is that he left for Egypt. Now when he went to Egypt, he went with his wife, Sarah. Now there's many narrations mentioning this, that when Ibrahim went with his wife, Sarah, he was worried about his wife. He was worried about his wife. And his wife was very beautiful, as the narrations mention. Now, when they went into Egypt, the ruler at that time, he was looking for the most beautiful women that he can get his hands on. So as soon as he found out that this woman, Sarah, comes into town, his men, they go out, searching, and then they find this woman. And now Ibrahim alayhi salam, he doesn't want people to know that he is married to her. So he uses something called tawriya. Tawriya means to say something that's truthful, but you mean something else, right? You mean something else. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, what he did is that when they were asking who this woman is in relation to him, he told the people that this is my sister. He told them that this is my sister. Now, of course, what did Ibrahim alayhi salam intend? He intended that she was his what? Sister in Islam. Obviously, she's not his sister. He didn't marry his sister, right? There's no incest going on. All right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam said that she's my sister, intending that she's my sister in faith. All right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he tried to kind of protect himself, protect his family, but eventually the king got his men to bring Sarah to him. So the narrations mention that when he was alone with Sarah, she would make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects her from this tyrant, from this king. So what happened is the narrations mentioned that how this king, he would try to actually, make some moves, try to actually touch her. And she would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect her from this man. I mean, imagine this, like a woman is married and she's facing this situation. It's difficult. So she's making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save her, and the king's hand becomes paralyzed. Right? And then he says to her that, what have you done to me? Right? What have you done to me? Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pray to Allah, do something about my hand. And then she makes dua, and then he becomes cured from that again. And then he keeps trying this a couple more times. And after a while of trying this, and asking her to undo what she's done, and it's all by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission, right? This narration, there's a couple different narrations in Bukhari that you can find of this. He then asks her to free me. So she makes dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees him from whatever hold Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had him on. And then after that, he said that you have not sent me a woman, you've sent me a devil. Right? You sent me a shaitan, like get this woman out of here. And he said, give her a gift, give her something and get her out of here. Now, what was the gift that the ruler gave to Sarah? Does anybody know? It was Hajar. Right? Hajar, this woman was given to Sarah alayhi salam as a slave, as a servant. And of course, back then, slavery was allowed. Right? It was something that was halal, during that time. So they had slavery, right? So Sarah alayhi salam, she had Hajar as her slave. Now, what happened is that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when his wife came back to him, it was time to leave. They went back to Bayt al-Maqdis. They went back to Palestine. They went back to Palestine. When they went back to Palestine, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Sarah, they were trying to have a child for a long time. Right? They were trying to have a child for a long time. And now a long time passes. Right? A long time passes, and Ibrahim and Sarah, they're not having any children. So what happened is that Sarah, she kind of felt bad. Right? She kind of felt bad because perhaps the problem was with her. Perhaps she wasn't, it was some issue with the reproductive system. So what she did is that she gave Hajar as a servant to Ibrahim alayhi salam. She gave Hajar as a gift to Ibrahim alayhi salam, her own husband, to have as his slave woman. Right? To have as a slave woman. Now Ibrahim alayhi salam, he took Hajar to himself. now the question was Hajar, because we know Hajar eventually gives birth to Ismail. This is a very important point. A lot of people don't, perhaps they don't think about this. Hajar now, she was given to Ibrahim alayhi salam by Sarah as a slave woman, right? As a slave. Now the question is, did she ever marry Ibrahim alayhi salam? Do we have any authentic sources telling us that she married him, or did she remain as a slave woman? Right? And then she gave birth to his child, right? So is there any way that we can kind of decide this? And the answer is, from authentic sources, I don't think you're ever going to find any hadiths that tell us that he actually married her. Right? I don't think you're going to find any hadiths. It's definitely not in the Quran. Hajar is not even mentioned by name in the Quran. So Hajar, do we know if she was even his wife to begin with? Can we even say that Hajar was the wife of Ibrahim alayhi salam? She gave birth to his son, yeah. But she was his slave. Now, from the Christian sources and the Jewish sources, they do have some information in their tradition that tells us that how he married her. He married her after Sarah gave him Hajar as a wife, right? He married her. All right, so in Genesis, in 16:3 in Genesis, the Bible tells us, so after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarah, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. So according to the Christian sources, it says in there that how Ibrahim alayhi salam married Hajar. So it's not as if this woman gave birth to his child and she wasn't his wife, right? And of course, in their Sharia, the slave woman is just like the wife, right? So she can give birth to the child and she will be the mother and everything is halal. There's nothing haram that's going on there, right? Even the Prophet ﷺ, he had a slave woman, right? And we don't have anything clear cut telling us that he married his slave woman, Maryam. And she gave birth to his son. What was his son's name that she gave birth to? Ibrahim, right? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he himself had a slave woman. He had slaves. He bought and sold slaves. Right, slavery was allowed during that time, and that's a whole different topic. But I just want you guys to be aware of this. All right. So what happened after this is Hajar gives birth to a child now. Ibrahim has been trying for so long with Sarah to have a child. It's not working. Now, as soon as he comes close to Hajar alayhi salam, she gives birth to Ismail. Now, how do you think Sarah's gonna feel? Sarah's gonna start to feel jealous. So the narration mentioning that, that how Hajar, she became afraid of Sarah because Sarah was just so jealous, right? So she complained. Sarah complained to Ibrahim about Hajar, right? She tells Ibrahim alayhi salam that get away from me. I don't want to see her. I can't deal with this anymore. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he then tells us, Ibn Kathir mentions, I'm not making this up, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam tells Sarah that do whatever you want with her. Right? You could do whatever you want with her. And perhaps there's some indication that she was his slave woman, not his wife, because how would he tell Sarah to have any authority over her? So he tells Sarah alayhi salam to basically do whatever you want with her. And the narration mentions that how Hajar, she ran away. She ran away, right? She dipped, she was out of there. And she was hiding somewhere, right? Now, Ibn Kathir mentions this narration that an angel comes to her. I mean, you're going to read a lot of these stories. A lot of the stories that you read from Bani Israel, you're going to find that angels would come to people and angels would talk to people. This was something normal then. Obviously today, I don't think anybody, you're going to be contacted by any angel tonight. Allahu A'lam, right? Perhaps it's something else that's contacting you. May Allah protect us, right? But an angel comes to her and then tells her how, don't worry, don't be afraid of Sarah. Right, go back. It's going to be fine. It's going to be chill. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you a son, your son Ismail, which she had already given birth to. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a lot of great things come from this son. So eventually she comes back. And when she comes back, Sarah's still at it. She's like, get this woman away. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, what he decides to do is he decides to take Hajar and her baby away. Right, just to prevent the fitna. And of course, we're going to see why this, what this eventually led to, right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he takes Hajar and they leave. And the place that Ibrahim alayhi salam takes Hajar, what is that place? Which place is it? Huh? To where? To Mecca, right? Now, was there anybody living in Mecca at that time? No, it was barren, right? It was barren. Nobody was living there. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ibn Kathir mentions this, that when Hajar, when she was taken by Ibrahim to Mecca, all of a sudden they go in this land and Hajar is like, what? Like, where are we going? Where are you leaving us? And Ibrahim alayhi salam, all of a sudden, he's leaving. And she's like, why are you leaving me here? Right, you're leaving me here in the middle of nowhere with my baby, with just a little bit of water and some dates. Like, what am I going to do with this? So Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't even respond to her. He just kept walking. So eventually, the narration mentioned how she started tugging on his clothes. She's like, really? Like, you have to give me an answer. So then she asks him, she says that, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala command you with this? Did Allah command you with bringing us here? And she was a believer. Right? Hajar alayhi salam was a believer, right? She believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said, did Allah azza wa jal command you to bring us to Mecca? And he said, yes. So she said, إِذَنْ لَا يُضَيِّعُنَا. She said, in that case, He will not leave us alone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of us. So then Ibrahim alayhi salam, he then left. Now this time, Ibrahim alayhi salam is around 86 years old. He's very old, right? So he got his first child at that age. And 13 years later, as Ibn Kathir mentions, Ishaq would be born. Now, upon leaving Mecca, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he makes this dua. And you can find this dua in Surah Ibrahim. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, رَبَّنَا إِنِّي أَسْكَنْتُ مِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي بِوَادٍ غَيْرِ ذِي زَرْعٍ عِنْدَ بَيْتِكَ الْمُحَرَّمِ. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, "O our Lord, indeed I have settled my family here in this land that has no vegetation. It doesn't have any crops. Doesn't have any crops. Remember, this is a land nobody would live in this land. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. Nobody would live in that area. And then he says, "Oh Allah, I've left them in this land near your sacred house." Near your sacred house. Now the question is, was the Kaaba there before Ibrahim alayhi salam? Some ikhtilaf. We're going to get to that inshallah. Was Ibrahim the first one to build the Kaaba, or was it there already? There's some issues. We're going to get to that inshallah. Alright, and then he says, رَبَّنَا لِيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ. Ibrahim, he says, "Oh Allah, let them establish the salah." If there's one thing he's going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them the benefits of the akhirah. Of course, Allah azza wa jalla will take care of their dunya. But he says, "Oh Allah, let them establish the salah." How many people have kids? How many people have families? But then there's no salah going on. But if you pray the salah, rarely you would find a Muslim who's praying 5 times a day and he's on point with the salah, she's on point with the salah, and she's not doing anything else. I don't think you're ever going to find that. Would you ever find somebody who's praying 5 times a day and they're not doing any other good? I don't think you're going to find that. So that's why Ibrahim alayhi salam, he understood, if they're praying salah, other things are going to fall in line. Right? Because the salah, inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. The salah protects and it forbids and it prevents a person from all sorts of lewdness. Right? Lewdness as well as evil. That's what the salah does. If you do it properly and you have the khushu', that's what it does for you. So he says, "Oh Allah, let them establish the prayer. Make them establish the prayer. فَجْعَلْ أَفْئِدَةً مِّنَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْهِمْ." And then he says, "Oh Allah, make the hearts of the people incline towards them." Right? Make the people have love for these people. وَرَزُقُهُم مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْكُرُونَ. And oh Allah, give them abundant fruits and vegetation. Right? Give them fruits, give them goodness, right? Provide for them so that they may be thankful. Now, anybody goes today in Mecca, you're not going to be starving. Especially if you go for Hajj or Umrah, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been providing, right? For thousands of years for these people in that land, right? So just look at that. From one point where there was nothing, Ibrahim alayhi salam understood that Allah azza wa jalla has a plan, right? So that's how people started to settle in this area. Now, what happened is Ibrahim, after he makes a dua, he's out of there. Right? Ibrahim alayhi salam goes back to Asham, to Palestine, to basically live with Sarah and to continue his life. Now Hajar is left here all alone. I was reading, subhanallah, this is kind of sad. I was reading this person, I'm not going to even mention who said this, but it's this, I guess, public figure, I guess you can say. And this person, of course, claims to be a Muslim, and they're spreading their version of Islam, and it's a woman. She said, not that matters, it could be a man, but I'm just, she said that how, she's talking about this story, she wrote an article, and she's talking about this story, and she said Abraham was a deadbeat father. Subhanallah. Right? Somebody who claims to be an imam, somebody who claims to be a scholar of Islam is saying that Ibrahim alayhi salam, Khalilullah, is a deadbeat dad. Why is she saying this? Because he left his wife and his baby in the middle of nowhere just to prevent some issues going on between Sarah and Hajar. But if you think about it, didn't this all fall into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan? The issues that was, like sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you in a certain situation or gives you something, but you don't know how you're going to get there. And sometimes it may be some issues. So, like for example, how did the Prophet ﷺ get to Medina? Medina is a blessed place. How did he get there? You think he wanted to live there? No. He didn't want to be kicked out of Mecca, but through being kicked out of Mecca, through certain social issues that we have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about what He wants. That's when, that's why when Hajar, when she asked Ibrahim that, who told you to leave us here? Who did Ibrahim alayhi salam say? Did he say, oh, I just wanted to leave you because this was a really far place and you're not going to get into any contact with Sarah? Did he say that? No, he said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to be here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes brings about what He wants through certain issues that happen among us. Is everybody clear how this works? So it's not like Ibrahim just left them for no reason. This woman, she doesn't understand that this was a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You think Ibrahim alayhi salam, if he would just do it for no reason, just leave his wife and his child there, without any help? Of course not. So he did this out of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's command. So you can't say he's a deadbeat dad, because he's doing it on purpose and for a wisdom. All right? So when she's left here now, she just has like a little bit of food, she has some water, and she's trying to breastfeed her child. Now eventually she's there's nobody. You can imagine how scared she's going to be. Anybody could come around, rob her. Eventually she runs out of water. Now any mother is going to panic if you have nothing to feed your kids. Mothers would rather starve. Perhaps not all of them, but the vast majority of them. And the average mom would rather starve than to have the baby be hungry. So she started running back and forth. And there were two hills at that time, right? Safa and Marwa. So she started running back and forth, looking for somebody, going up, on the top of the hill, trying to see if there's anybody around so that they can help her. Obviously, she's trying to do anything that she can. So she's running back and forth, and Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, Ibn Kathir mentions this as well. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, فَلِذَلِكَ سَعَ النَّاسُ بَيْنَهُمَا. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, this is the reason why people run between Safa and Marwa. So if you ever go for Umrah, if you ever go for Hajj, you're going to be doing this. So just think about this story. Think about this experience that you're having right now and try to think about how the experience was for Hajar, right? As a woman with a baby running back and forth between these two mountains. So when she was running, right, on the end, on her last stop between Safa and Marwa, she heard a sound. She heard a sound, but she didn't quite make out what exactly it was. So she told herself to be quiet, and then she listened. And then she heard the sound again, and then she calls out, because she doesn't know who's making the sound. She says that, I've heard you, but can you help me? Is there anybody there? And then all of a sudden, Ibn Kathir mentions this narration that an angel appears in front of her. An angel appears. Now, was this Jibreel alayhi salam? Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best, but it was an angel. And this angel, what this angel does is this angel digs the ground, and then water starts to gush out of the ground. Right now, the narration mentioned, some narrations mention the wing of the angel, some of them mention the foot of the angel. Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. But the point is that the water started gushing out. Now, when she saw that water, she was relieved. So she quickly ran to the water. She started drinking. She started making a little pool for the water to kind of stay in that area. Right? So as the water is gushing out, she's making this kind of like this basin for the water. She's trying to make an outline for where the water can stay. Now the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Abbas mentions this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said in one narration, يَرْحَمَ اللَّهُ أُمَّ إِسْمَعِيلٍ. He said, may Allah's mercy be upon the mother of Ismail. لَوْ تَرَكَتْ زَمْزَمْ لَكَانَتْ عَيْنًا مَعِينًا. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that if she left the water of Zamzam, it would have been a big spring. It would have been very big, but she made, she was the one that kind of made it confined into that area, right? She was scooping up the water. So Ibn Kathir mentions this narration in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya. Now what happens is that, when there's water, who do you think are the first ones to come around when there's water? Birds, right? Because the birds are flying around looking for water, right? Perhaps other animals, they would not be able to see the water. Right? But the birds that are flying around, they start flocking around and flying around the water. Now, people that are traveling, anyone who's in the desert and they're trying to look for water, they're going to be looking at where the birds are landing. Because normally if the birds are landing, there's going to be some food there. There's going to be something there that the birds are curious, especially if the birds are circling around a particular place. Right? So there was this tribe that was passing by. And the name of this tribe, does anybody know what the name of the tribe is? Yes, Jurhum. And this was a tribe, this is one of the ancient tribes of the Arabian Peninsula. They were from Yemen. Right? So the original Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, they were from Yemen. So from Yemen, they were, they were this nomadic tribe. They were traveling through. And when they saw the birds landing in that place, they went to that place. And lo and behold, they found, like imagine the look on their faces when they find this one woman there with her baby, and there's this pool of water. So when there's a pool of water, when there's a spring, it looks like a good place to settle. So then they ask her permission. They said to her that, do we have your permission to settle here? And she says, sure, but you don't have any rights to this water. It's mine, right? This water belongs to me, right? So she made sure that she got the authority over the water that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provided for her. And of course, what happened after that is that she lived among them, right? They came and they settled and they spoke Arabic. Ismail alayhi salam, as a baby, he grew up, he learned the Arabic language from them, right? So was Ismail alayhi salam, was he originally from those Arabs? No, right? He was a baby, but he grew up among them. He married a woman from among them, and he took their culture, their food, you can name it. Whatever they had, Ismail alayhi salam grew up in that society. Now eventually, what happened is that, Hajar alayhi salam, she's raising Ismail, and he's a small child. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he would come and he would occasionally visit. Remember, is Ibrahim living in Mecca with them? No, Ismail is not seeing his dad every day. No, Ibrahim alayhi salam is in Palestine with his other family that he has. So Ibrahim alayhi salam would come periodically, little by little, bit by bit, he would spend little chunks of time with his son Ismail. Now one time he comes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in Surah Al-Safat. One time he comes and then he says to Ismail, Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned, فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ مَعَهُ السَّعِي. When Ismail reached the age where he was able to run with his dad, right? Perhaps maybe 4, 5, 6, Allah Azza wa Jal knows. But around that age, when Ismail reached that age, Ibrahim alayhi salam said to his son, قَالَ يَا بُنَيَّ إِنِّي أَرَى فِي الْمَنَامِ أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ فَانظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he gets this dream that he is slaughtering his son, literally killing his son. So he tells that dream to Ismail alayhi salam. He says, oh Ismail, I see in my dream that I'm slaughtering you. I'm literally killing you. Imagine, if you were a son, you'd be like, I don't know about that. Right? I don't know about that dream. But Ismail alayhi salam, he understood that the dreams of the prophets, they are wahi. There's a narration where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that ru'ya al-anbiya'i wahi, that the dreams of the prophets are revelation. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he got this dream, he understood it's not just some random dream. It's from Allah Azza wa Jal. So he took it as his command to actually slaughter his son. So he says to his son that I've been commanded to slaughter you. What do you think about this? Ismail alayhi salam, he said, قَالَ يَا أَبَتِ فَعَلْ مَا تُؤْمَرْ. He said, oh my father, do as you've been commanded. سَتَجِدُنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Insha'Allah, you will find that I'm going to be from those who are patient. I'm going to have sabr. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he took his son, he got the knife ready and he took his son. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ وَتَلَّهُ لِلْجَبِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, when they both submitted, and they both had a full submission in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah mentions that Ibrahim put his son on the side of his forehead. He kind of put him on the side, just so that he wouldn't be able to look his son in the eye as he's doing this act. And he gets ready to literally cut the neck of his son, subhanAllah. He's literally ready to go through the commandment, right? Go through with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَيَّا إِبْرَاهِيمُ قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ الرُّؤْيَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls out, oh Ibrahim, you fulfilled the dream. All the dream was telling you to do was to get to this point, not to actually kill him. So the commandment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him in the dream was not to actually kill his son, but it was to go to the point where you're about to do it. That's what the commandment was. It was never to actually kill his son. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, it's a dream. He's trying to interpret it as best as he can. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives him a ram, some other animal, to slaughter in the place of his son. And he does so. The narration mentioned, I believe it's Ibn Abbas that Ibn Kathir mentions, who says that the ram was a white ram that Ibrahim alayhi salam slaughtered in its place. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ الْبَلَاءُ الْمُبِينُ. This is a manifest test. It's a clear test. Now imagine somebody going through a test like this, right? And we're not commanded. Nobody here is commanded to sacrifice your children at all, right? This was specifically for Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Allah Azza wa Jal never intended for him to go through with it in the first place. But imagine you were in the position of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Would you have that submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Would you have that trust? Right? Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned, فَلَمَّا أَسْلَمَ. When they both submitted. Aslama is the verb from Islam. It means to submit. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned that how Ibrahim and Ismail had Islam. They both submitted. Is your Islam, could your Islam be compared to that Islam? Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. But just like picture this, just imagine yourself, like if you have a child, or maybe if you don't have a child, just imagine how much your parents love you. Just imagine having a child and having that commandment to do that. Would you actually go through with it? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you to do so, right? And of course, we're not being asked to do that, we're being asked to do much less than that. If somebody, he's like, yeah man, I would do it if I was in Ibrahim's shoes. But Allah is asking you to pray Fajr, bro, like that's not even that much. And you can't even pray Fajr, you're like, yeah, if I was in his shoes, I would have did this and that. You don't know that. These are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives most difficult tests to those who can handle them. That's why the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that those who have the hardest tests are the Anbiya, the prophets. So sometimes, like I was mentioning a story to a sister that had a problem, right? She had some like family issues. And I was mentioning a prophet that also had some family issues as well, Yusuf and some of the other prophets. And she said, well, don't tell me about them. They were prophets. They were prophets. Thinking that, oh, they're prophets, so automatically they went through with the test. You don't think it was hard for them as well? It was difficult for them as well. But we're not being, given the same tests that they were given. That's the point. Is if they are given to us as examples to follow. That's the point. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he went through with this. Now, there's kind of a controversy about the story. Who was the son of Ibrahim that was about to be slaughtered? Who is the dhabih? Who is the one that was about to be slaughtered? Is it Ismail? I think every single khutbah you've heard, every Eid al-Adha, right? Every Eid al-Adha, it's Ismail, 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 Ismail. But do you know that there are a ton of scholars who hold the opinion that it's Ishaq? And even if you go to the Jewish and Christian sources, it's Ishaq. Ishaq, right? Isaac was the one who was going to be slaughtered, not Ishmael, not Ismail. Yes, but that's the point. The scholars who argue that it's Ismail, they mention all of those different things, right? But even if you look at it from a purely biblical point of view, like, just as their brother mentioned, Isaac wasn't even born at that time, so there's some discrepancies. And Ibn Kathir has this whole long section where he debates all of the different arguments, and many scholars have done so as well. But I'm just going to mention one of those scholars who held the view that it was Ishaq. And like I said, a lot of people, this might be kind of like the first time you're hearing this, right? But Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, Imam al-Mufassirin, al-Tabari held the view that it was Ishaq. And there's many others that, we're not going to mention them now, but that's just one example. In his tafsir, he holds the view that it was Ishaq, and many other scholars as well, right? But this is just to let you guys know that certain issues, you have some scholarly difference of opinion. Now, the reason, I think one of the clearest reasons why it's Ismail and not Ishaq is just look at the context of Surah As-Safat. Go home and read Surah As-Safat. The same ayat that I just read to you right now, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that He put him down on his forehead, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him something else to slaughter. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then starts talking about Ishaq. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was speaking about Ismail earlier, then why is He starting to talk about Ishaq in a new context, right? It wouldn't make sense if the earlier section that talks about him slaughtering his son, it wouldn't make sense if that was Ishaq as well. It would only make sense and be eloquent if that was referring to Ismail. So like I said, it's a matter of different opinions. We may have some arguments, but those other scholars, they have their arguments as well. Probably they have their arguments and things like that. But it seems much more clear that it was Ismail and not Ishaq. And there's even some narration from the Sahaba. For example, I believe there's a narration that Ibn Kathir mentions, that Ibn Abbas, he says that how the head of the ram was kind of put near the Kaaba. Right, it was put near the Kaaba, and it was dried up. Now, how could it be put near the Kaaba if it was for Ishaq? Ibn Kathir mentioned how Ishaq never went to Mecca. Why would the ram be put next to the Kaaba? You guys see the point here, right? So there's many reasons why it seems like it is Ismail and not Ishaq. Does anybody have any questions about this? Everybody's clear? Alhamdulillah. All right, so eventually what happened is that, Ismail, after this, of course he continued to live, he got married from these Arabs, and eventually Hajar alayhi salam, she passes away. She dies. Now after this point, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as I mentioned, he would periodically come and visit his son Ismail. So, one day, Ibn Kathir mentions this as well, that when Ibrahim, when he was coming to visit Ismail, he came to Ismail's house and he didn't see Ismail home. He didn't find him home. Perhaps he was doing some hunting, whatever he was doing. So when he came home, he found his wife at the doorstep. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, he speaks to the wife of Ismail, and he asks her like, hey, how's everything going? How are things? Like, how's life? How's everything? And then all of a sudden she starts to complain. Oh, things are difficult, things are this, things are that. She starts to complain. Now, obviously, Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't like that. He's like, what? Okay, you're married to my son and you're complaining like this? So he basically tells her that, you know what, give a message to Ismail, to my son Ismail for me. Just give him this message for me. And the message was to change your doorstep. Right, to change your doorstep. So, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he goes on his way, he leaves, right? He's just stopping by to see his son. He leaves. When Ismail comes home, his wife was like, hey, your dad came over and we had this, enlightening conversation, and he told me something, I don't really understand what it means, but he said to change your doorstep. So Ismail alayhi salam, he understood what that meant, and that meant to divorce her. Right, to change your doorstep, change your wife. So Ismail alayhi salam, he's thinking about his situation, and he's thinking, perhaps this is not the best woman for me. So he gets into a divorce. The prophets, they had this as well, right? Ismail alayhi salam, a prophet, had a divorce. So they had some, issues in their marriage. We're not blaming anybody, but we're just saying that they had issues as well, right? Certain problems that led to divorce. All right. So Ismail alayhi salam, he divorces her. The next time, Ismail, he gets married again, and Ibrahim alayhi salam is passing by the town. He comes to visit his son Ismail once again. Now, when he comes to the house, he doesn't find Ismail like the last time, but he finds his new wife. So he's talking to this new wife. She's never really met him before, right? And he's like, oh, I'm your father-in-law, and then he basically asks her the same question that he asked the first wife: how are things going? How's everything? How's life? So all of a sudden she's like, Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah Azza wa Jalla, we praise Him, right? Everything is going good. Things may be difficult, but she was praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She wasn't complaining. So then he said to her, he's like, I have to go now, but I'm going to leave you with a message to give to my son, and that message is to keep your doorstep. Ismail comes home. She tells him, hey, your father came along, first time meeting him. He said to keep your doorstep. So Ismail, he understood that means to keep this woman. She's a good wife. Right? So Ibrahim alayhi salam, it's not like he didn't have any relationship with his son. He would come and he would visit from time to time. So if you think about it, he had two families. One family in Asham, in Palestine, and one family in Mecca. And he will go back and forth. Right? Sometimes, you hear some stories of people having the same type of setup. Right? They have one family in this country, another family in another country. But let's not get into that now. All right, so Ibrahim alayhi salam, he would come and he would visit Ismail periodically. Now, another time he comes to Ismail, and he gets to meet Ismail this time. And he tells Ismail alayhi salam that, hey, Allah has commanded me with something. And Ismail, he responds by saying, and at this point Ismail is a grown man, he tells his dad, he's like, Dad, do what you've been commanded. Ibrahim alayhi salam then says, are you going to help me do it? And he's like, let's do it. So what happens is that Ibrahim alayhi salam, he tells Ismail that, we've been commanded to build this house of worship, right? In the same place that you're living, in Mecca. So as they were building this house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as they were building the Kaaba and constructing the Kaaba, Ismail, he would hand his father things, they would work together, organize the work, and eventually they got it done. Now when they got this, when they got the Kaaba finished, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he makes this long dua that we find in Surah Al-Baqarah. We're going to mention that in a bit. But the question is that was Ibrahim the first one to build the Kaaba? Can we actually say as Muslims that Ibrahim was the first one to build the Kaaba? Or was it built before, but he just basically renovated it and kind of made it better, built the foundations of it? There's some scholarly different opinions on this particular issue as well. All right. So, and just to give you a summary of the different opinions, you have this scholar. His name is Badruddin Al-Aini, a Hanafi scholar. He has this explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari called Umdatul Qari. In his book, he mentions وَاخْتَلَفُوا فِي أَوَّلِ مَنْ بَنَى الْكَعْبَةِ. He says the scholars have different opinions as to the first person who built the Kaaba. All right. A lot of people don't even know this, right? A lot of people have never even heard of this difference of opinion. But there are many scholars who have different opinions, right? He says, فَقِيلِ, it has been said, the first view is أَوَّلُ مَنْ بَنَاهَا الْمَلَائِكَةِ. The first ones who built the Kaaba were the angels. The angels built the Kaaba. They were the first ones to build the Kaaba. Why, he says? This group of scholars, they say that the angels built the Kaaba because when they questioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom about why He would create the human beings, They built the Kaaba so that they may worship as a result of their question. The second view, Al-Aini mentions that how the second view is that the first one who built it was Adam alayhi salam. It was Adam alayhi salam. That's the second view. And he mentions وَذَكَرَهُ Ibn Ishaq. Ibn Ishaq, one of the early historians, he holds this view as well. That Adam was the one who built the Kaaba. Ibrahim was the one who just kind of renovated it and built the foundations of it. Right? The third view, وَقِيلْ أَوَّلُ مَنْ بَنَاهَا Sheeth alayhi salam. The third view that Al-Aini mentions is that Sheeth, who was Sheeth? We spoke about Sheeth, the son of Adam alayhi salam. After Habil and Qabil, Sheeth alayhi salam was the one who built the Kaaba. Now, can we know exactly who built the Kaaba? The answer is no. These are all just kind of like speculations. We have no authentic narration. That's why in Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, Ibn Kathir mentions that there's nothing authentic. There's nothing authentic for us to even be close to finding out who was the first one to build it before Ibrahim. But Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala, he holds the view that Ibrahim was the one who was the first one to build it. Right? And then he mentions all of the ayat and all of the evidences that show that Ibrahim alayhi salam is the only one that we know of that actually constructed the Kaaba. He's the first one that we know of that constructed it. All right? And there's many ayat in the Quran that show that as well. Now, the place of the Kaaba, Mecca, is a sacred place. And Mecca has been a haram. Mecca has been a sacred place from the very beginning. There's a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ speaks about Mecca. He says, إِنَّ هَذَا الْبَلَدَ حَرَّمَهُ اللَّهُ يَوْمَ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ فَهُوَ حَرَامٌ بِحُرْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says that how this land, this country, this land right here, Allah Azza wa Jalla has made it a sanctuary. Allah has made it sacred on the day that He created the heavens and the earth. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this universe, He decreed that Mecca will be a sacred place. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us in the same narration, فَهِيَ حَرَامٌ, right? فَهُوَ حَرَامٌ. This is a sanctuary and it will remain that way until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? So that's why when you go to the Haram in Mecca, there's certain things you can't do there as opposed to other places. That's a whole other topic. We're not going to get into that. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as he's building the Kaaba, the walls are very high and he's not able to reach all the way to the top. So what Ismail does is he brings this big rock and he puts it for Ibrahim alayhi salam to stand up. He builds this thing, this kind of platform out of stone for Ibrahim alayhi salam to stand on so that he can reach the top, so that he can really build the Kaaba well. Now this stone right here is called Maqamu Ibrahim. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions it in the Quran. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. And take the maqam of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his tawaf, at the end of the tawaf, you pray 2 rak'ahs behind Maqam Ibrahim. Now, Maqamu Ibrahim literally means the place where Ibrahim stood. So, Maqam Ibrahim literally means the place of standing of Ibrahim. It's literally the place where he stood. Now, if you go to Mecca right now, how does the Maqam Ibrahim look? What are some of the characteristics of it? Yeah. Good, it's like in this dome structure, right? This golden casing, and you can look through it, right? Raise your hand if you look through it and you're actually seeing what's inside of it. Raise your hand. Only a few of us, right? But if you look in, what do you see inside? Yeah, you see these two kind of like big footprints inside of rock, right? Now, Ibn Kathir, hundreds of years ago, Ibn Kathir comments on this. Ibn Kathir tells us that how this same rock, those same footprints are the same footprints of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was standing on it to kind of get to the height of the Kaaba. Those are the same footprints. Now the golden casing right now, when was that put in? That was put in later after the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now even, a lot of people don't even know this, but during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibn Kathir mentions this as well. During the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Maqam Ibrahim was kind of attached to one of the walls of the Kaaba. Right, so look at the wall that's next to the Maqam Ibrahim if you ever go. That same wall, it was attached to that wall during the time of the Prophet ﷺ until his death. And during the time of Abu Bakr's time as well. When Umar became the Khalifa, Umar radiallahu anhu, what he did is that he moved it from the wall of the Kaaba and he brought it a little further out. Why? Because of the crowd that was happening near the walls of the Kaaba. Right, so he kind of moved it just a bit out. So now anytime you go there or you look at pictures, you see that there is a gap. Right, you can literally walk between Maqam Ibrahim and the Kaaba. All right, so this was done by Umar radiallahu anhu, and he's the Khalifa of the Muslimin. He did this because of the maslahah that he saw. And it's remained that way until our day, until our time. And as I mentioned, if you're making tawaf, after you finish your tawaf, every tawaf you pray the 2 rak'ahs behind Maqam Ibrahim. All right. Now, the Kaaba, Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this in Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentions this section of this dua that Ibrahim alayhi salam makes. Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ. And remember when Ibrahim was raising the foundations of the house, وَإِسْمَعِيلُ, as well as Ismail. He was doing it along with Ismail. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Both of them made this dua. Ibrahim and Ismail made a dua. They said, Oh Allah, accept from us. Indeed, you are the one who hears and you are the one who has all knowledge. ربنا وجعلنا مسلمين لك ومن ذريتنا أمة مسلمة لك وأرنا مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. They said, Oh Allah, make us both Muslims, those submitting to you, and make from our children. Who is making this dua? It's Ibrahim and Ismail. Is Ishaq included in this dua? Is he making this dua? No, he's not. The only ones that are making this dua at this point are Ibrahim and Ismail. They say, Oh Allah, accept from us. Oh Allah, make us Muslims. Oh Allah, make from our children, our descendants, a submitting nation to you. Now, who is that submitting nation? It was a Sahaba. Right? It was a Sahaba. So literally, the answer of the dua of Ibrahim a.s. is literally the Prophet ﷺ. That's why there's authentic narration where the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Ana da'watu Ibrahim. He says, I am the supplication of Ibrahim. I am literally the answer to that dua. So our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ coming among the this people, the Arabs in Mecca, is a direct result of the dua of Ibrahim a.s. So imagine like just one dua that they have made, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers it in that way, where everything we do is literally based on that. Think about that, one dua. So never underestimate the power of one dua. It can be something that you look down, you may belittle or think that is something small. But in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it can go a long way. Alright? So, and then they continue their dua. Now, Ibrahim a.s., the way that he made the Kaaba, there's just some facts about the Kaaba. This is very interesting to know. When Ibrahim made the Kaaba, it didn't look the way that it looks today. It did not look the way that it looked today. When Ibrahim built it, the base of the Kaaba, if you look at the base, it's kind of like almost a perfect cube. Right? If you look at any picture of it, it looks cubical, right? The way that Ibrahim a.s. made it, the base was kind of like rectangle shaped. It was much like longer on one of the walls. Right? So the length of of two of the walls were long. So the base of it was a rectangle shape. Later on, what the Arabs have done is they kind of like made it. They made those two parallel walls. They've made them shorter, so that it kind of looks more like a cubical structure. Now, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim where the Prophet ﷺ was telling the Muslims, he was telling the Sahaba about how Ibrahim built the Kaaba. So he was telling them that how it was like this and it was like that. So Aisha, his wife, she's like, why don't you just like destroy it and build it the same way that Ibrahim made it? So the Prophet ﷺ, what he says is, he said that how if it wasn't for your people just accepting Islam, I would have done it. In other words, why is he saying this? Why is he saying that if your people weren't mushrikun yesterday, I would have done it? Why is he saying that? They like, what would they say? Okay, perhaps that's a wisdom, right? Is that he didn't want to build it the way that Ibrahim a.s. made it, so that people may think that it's a sunnah to kind of build the Kaaba however you want, right? People, that's a very good point. What else?
It's a sensitive thing for them.
Absolutely, it's sensitive.
Sacred.
Imagine if you were a mushrik before, you were worshipping idols, you were worshipping the idols in the Kaaba, and all of a sudden, you following this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you believe him as a prophet, he's changing some of your traditions, and all of a sudden he changes the Kaaba. Right? He changes the Kaaba. Even though you believe in him and everything, it's a sensitive issue. People's hearts are attached to the way that it looks. Right? And sometimes when you change certain symbols, you change certain things, people are going to feel some type of way. Even though they don't disagree with you, right? But it's just kind of a weird feeling, right? Things are not the same anymore. You know, sometimes if an imam changes in the masjid is the same, but certain things, when you change certain things, you're not doing something wrong, but sometimes the feeling of it is different. Sometimes the paint may change or something like this, right? But he didn't want to change it because of the sensitivity of the people. That's why he said, if your people were not new Muslims. In other words, the Prophet ﷺ is saying that if people were established in Islam for years, then perhaps he would have done it, right? But he's mentioning the wisdom. Why? Is that your people are new Muslims. And that shows you the wisdom that sometimes if there's something good, you have to look at the harms that will come from it. That's how the Prophet ﷺ was. It wasn't that, oh, this is the haqq, I'm going to do it no matter what. No, he looked at the harms that could possibly come from it, and he weighed between them. Now, so did the Prophet ﷺ rebuild it the way that Ibrahim ﷺ had it? No, he kept it the way that it was. He kept it the way that the Arabs kind of rebuilt it. Now, during his lifetime, when he was about 35 years old, around 5 years before he became a prophet, the Kaaba was actually destroyed by some natural disasters. Now what happened is when the Kaaba was destroyed, Quraysh, all of the different tribes, they were kind of working together to rebuild the Kaaba. And they rebuilt everything. So they were the ones who constructed the Kaaba in this time of Jahiliyyah. Now, they constructed everything, but when it came time to put the black stone in its place, everybody started to fight over it. They were literally about to kill each other over having the honor of putting the black stone in its spot. So the Quraysh, the chiefs of Quraysh, they were in the Haram, and then they said that the first person who walks into this masjid, we're going to have him settle this dispute among us. So the first person who walks in is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he walks in, his idea was that he's going to take a cloak, and he's going to have all the leaders of these tribes kind of stand around the cloak and hold the edges of this cloak. And he's going to put the black stone in the middle so that everybody can transport it together. So this way, everybody has the honor of putting the black stone in this place. Now, when it got to the point where he's putting the black stone in its corner, the Prophet ﷺ, he did it with his own hands. And everybody was cool with that. So he kind of averted them from total war. Like they literally dipped their hands in blood. They were ready to fight and kill each other over this. Right? But through his wisdom, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even before he was a prophet, he kind of warded away that fighting. Now, so the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and the Kaaba remained as it was, the way that Quraysh did it. Now later on, Abu Bakr's time passes, Umar's time passes. Who becomes the Khalifa after Umar? Uthman is assassinated. Then Ali radiallahu anhu becomes a Khalifa. Then the whole fitna happens between him and Muawiyah and this one and that one, and then all of these, these different things are happening. This time passes. Now, the leader of this time that we're going to talk about right now is Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, who is from the descendants of, they're related to Uthman, and they're from, they're like descendants of the Quraysh as well. So, Banu Umayyah, the Khulafa, you're going to read a lot of things. There were certain things that, of course, we don't agree with, and a lot of, atrocities, things were done later on, even during the time of the Sahaba. This king, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, while he was the king, while he was the Khalifa, while he was the leader, Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhum, he kind of like made his own state in Mecca. He kind of declared himself as the ruler of Mecca, and he got people's allegiance and everything, and they had their own kind of like independent state from Abdul Malik ibn Marwan in Mecca. So what happened is that Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, he sent Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, which was he was one of the governors of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Now Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, you're going to read some crazy stuff that has happened. Basically, he fought against Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu. And they were throwing rocks with catapults into Mecca. It was a big mess. So Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, he fought back against Al-Hajjaj. And what happened is Abdullah bin Zubayr, he was killed. Right? He was killed. So Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, while he was ruling in Mecca, Abdullah bin Zubayr, he died in the 73rd year of the Hijrah. So we're talking like 63 years after the Prophet ﷺ, has passed away, Abdullah ibn Zubayr dies. Now, while Abdullah ibn Zubayr was in power, what he did is he felt it was right to rebuild the Kaaba and build it the same way that Ibrahim a.s. had it. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu, who is his father? Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam is the father of Abdullah ibn az-Zubayr. Now, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, who is his wife? Asma bint Abi Bakr. So who is Abdullah ibn Zubayr's grandfather? Abu Bakr, right? And Aisha is the daughter of Abu Bakr. Aisha is the aunt of Abdullah ibn Zubayr. Abdullah ibn Zubayr's mom was Asma, and Asma's sister was Aisha. So in Mecca, Aisha was living in Mecca. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she showed Abdullah ibn Zubayr how the Prophet would have had it if he were to rebuild it in the foundations of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu anhu, what he did is that he kind of like did this renovation on the Kaaba, and he built it the same way that Aisha directed him to do it. Now what happened is after he got killed, and after Al-Hajjaj basically came into Mecca, what happened is that Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, what they did is they rebuilt it the same way that it was. They didn't want to keep it the same way that Abdullah ibn Zubayr made it. And he's a Sahabi as well, right? Abdullah ibn Zubayr is a Sahabi. So they rebuilt it the same way that it was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, how Quraysh had it. Now later on, after Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, after the Umayyad dynasty basically falls, the Abbasids come in, you have this ruler, his name is Al-Mahdi ibn al-Mansur. And he was the king during the time of Imam Malik's time. There's no, Sahaba around. Imam Malik, rahimahullah, Al-Mahdi ibn al-Mansur asks Imam Malik, he says, Imam Malik, how about we, this is years later, he says, how about we kind of like reconstruct the Kaaba and make it the same way that Abdullah ibn Zubayr had it? So what was Imam Malik's response? Imam Malik said that I don't want the Kaaba to be some toy, that every time a new ruler comes, he then changes it. Right? So Imam Malik told him, don't, that's not a good idea. That's not a good idea. Just keep it the way that it is. And until this day, it's been kept the same way that it is. Right? So those were just some of the changes that were made earlier on during the time of the Sahaba. But then it was renovated once again by Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, and then it continues to be the way that it is today. And there's a lot more things about the Kaaba as well. There's a lot more history about the Kaaba, but inshallah that's for another time. But this was basically just a summary of Ibrahim alayhi salam, his life, and Ismail. Next we're going to talk about Ishaq, because Ishaq ties in with the story of Lut. So we're going to speak about Ishaq and Lut and some other things about Ibrahim alayhi salam as well. So that's basically it for tonight. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything that they want to add? Yeah?
Is there any way to interpret dreams?
Huh?
To interpret dreams?
Interfere with what?
Dreams.
Huh?
To interpret.
Oh, is there a way to interpret dreams?
Yes.
Okay, that's a very good question. So, there's a book, right, called Tafsir al-Ahlam by Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah. Right? Now, is that book fully authentic? There's a book you can find in the Islamic libraries. Is that book, can it really authentically be traced back to, Ibn Sirin? Not exactly. So, you're going to find some books about, Tafsir al-Ahlam or interpretation of dreams. I mean, to be honest, like a lot of them, you have to take them with a grain of salt. Interpretation of dreams, you find that there are some specialists in it. You're going to find some people that can interpret dreams. And the Prophet ﷺ would interpret dreams. The Sahaba would interpret dreams. Right, you're going to find narrations of the Sahaba interpreting dreams, and a lot of these books about dream interpretation, they would mention the sources from, the Sahaba or some hadiths as well, right? But like I said, a lot of things you got to take with a grain of salt, and be careful where you take your sources from, right? Sometimes you go to somebody, they're literally pulling it out of their kufi. They have no idea, right? They're just kind of making it up as they go along. So you got to be very careful, right? But that being said, there are some people who do have some experience in this. Do I know anybody? No. Right? So like I said, you got to be, I think, if you get some books about this, you read up about it, maybe you could find some authentic books on it. Allahu alam, if I can't recommend any right now, but perhaps ask somebody, ask your local imam, try to find some resources, inshallah. But it is possible. Anyone?
I got a question. Assalamu alaikum. If I have same dream for multiple times, does it mean something?
If you have the same one?
Dreams.
Okay, that's a very good question. If you get the same dream multiple times, does it mean something? Yes and no, it depends. Sometimes people that are afflicted with black magic and jinn possession and things like that, they get dreams. Reoccurring dreams. I know one sister who gets the same dream every, I think it's Sunday night, Monday night, and Thursday night. Every week. Same exact dream. She sees, literally reliving through the same thing. And she's affected with some of this, black magic and jinn possession and things like that. You find some people they see like horrible dreams, nightmares. And a lot of these times, they're going through those problems. So it could be indicative of that. But like I said, you gotta, try to contact somebody of knowledge. Try to, maybe talk to Iraqi, somebody who does ruqya. Try to get some advice from them. They can guide you in that regard. You could, sometimes the dreams could be good. They could be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? The Prophet ﷺ tells us that there are dreams that you get and they're from Allah Azza wa Jal. They're a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The believers can get true dreams. And sometimes that dream could be a sign from Allah Azza wa Jal, right? A blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal. Sometimes it could be something in the future that hasn't happened yet. It could be some type of thing like this, right? So you could get some dream. You dream the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sometimes you could dream that multiple times in a row. Then of course that's a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal. But perhaps another aspect of it is that perhaps somebody is thinking about something all day, all night, every day, all week, right? And because of that, they dream it a lot. That's also a possibility, right? You wanna, you're waiting to go on a vacation. I don't know, and you keep thinking about it every day. Oh, I want to go to the Bahamas. I want to go here, and then you're dreaming all of a sudden islands and things like that. Perhaps, maybe, right? So that's a possibility as well. So it depends on the situation. It depends on the type of dream as well, right? Any other questions?
There is another question actually. Does narrations from history of the prophets have to have a good isnad to be taken?
Okay, that's a very good question. So what you find is that the scholars of history, even the scholars of hadith talk about this as well. When it comes to the history reports, it's very lenient. It's very lenient. What you find, if you read Tariq al-Tabari, you're going to find a ton of things in there that are not even authentic, and al-Tabari mentions that as well. The point is, in the history books, it's just, you read Sirat ibn Hisham, you read all of these things, Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, so many different books of history and narrations. You're going to find that they're just collecting these reports, but you could benefit from them, you could read them, right? You can benefit from them, but we don't take ahkam from these things, right? We don't derive rulings from these things. So a lot of these things, a lot of these like little details from the seerah, from the lives of the prophets, you got to take them with a grain of salt. And a lot of them, what you find, especially with the prophets and Ibrahim and others, a lot of the things that we mentioned from tonight that Ibn Kathir and others have mentioned, they're from Ahlul Kitab. They're from the Jews and the Christians. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that do not take what they say 100%, nor reject it, right? But the Prophet allows us to narrate it. He said, "Hadithu an bani Israel wala haraj." Narrate from them, and there's no sin, there's no problem, right? So we can narrate these stories. We can benefit from them, derive some general lessons, and even ahkam that are established in other authentic evidences, right? But to use it as an independent source for ahkam, for rulings, that's very problematic. And Allah knows best. Question?
Yes, I have 3 points to make.
Yeah.
One, there's reported that when Ibrahim was standing on the rock was going up with him. When Ismail was giving him the rock to put on the place on the Kaaba, the rock was actually moving.
Oh, it was going up and down.
Yes. Okay. I don't know how authentic that is. And they said the black stone forest was white.
Yeah.
And also the Hijra corner, the semicircle, that's what the part that was original Kaaba. So if you pray in there, it's like you're praying in the Kaaba.
Wait, repeat that last part again?
The Hijra corner, the semicircle, that's part of the Kaaba.
Yes.
That's the real length of the Kaaba.
Yes.
So they say if you pray in that circle, it's like you're praying in the Kaaba.
Absolutely, yes. That's correct as well. And he said that there was a third thing? Was it
the third thing was the stone that he was standing on. We used to go up.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for those comments, mashallah. Right? I mean, those are some other facts that we can benefit from as well. Any other comments, questions? We have one more?
There is another question. How did the Kaaba that was built by Prophet Ibrahim become a place of idols?
Become a place of idols?
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. That's a very good question. So the thing is that the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam, they continued to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the lineage of Ismail. So after Ismail got married, he had children, generations passed by. Everybody was worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. There was no shirk. Now there was a man, his name is Amr bin Luhay. Amr ibn Luhay, the Prophet ﷺ, there's even a hadith where he tells us that how he saw Amr ibn Luhay dragging his intestines in the fire. Amr ibn Luhay was the first person to bring idols to the Arabian Peninsula. So Amr ibn Luhay, what happened to him, you can read the history books about this as well. Amr ibn Luhay would travel around. He would travel around different places. So outside of the Arabian Peninsula, he would find people worshiping idols. So he brought those idols into Mecca so that people can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through those idols. And it's through that, it's actions like this that led to the Arabs eventually all, committing idol worship. Right? So this is how the idols eventually got into the Kaaba, 360 idols, and they started worshiping these idols. But it was little by little, eventually that led to them committing full out shirk and worshiping these idols. Right? So and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Yeah?
Was Lut a prophet when Ibrahim was with Ismail?
Wait, what was that again?
Was Lut a prophet?
Who was what?
Lut.
Who was Lut?
No, was Lut a prophet when
Was Lut a prophet?
when Ibrahim was with Ismail in Mecca? Like at the same
When
time?
Ibrahim was with Ismail in Mecca.
Yeah.
Specifically when he became a prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. It doesn't come to me right now. Allah knows best. Alright, so we're going to stop here, inshallah. I'll see you guys next time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. But one last thing, we do have tickets on sale now. You can buy them right now. So don't forget that we have our event coming up this Saturday. It's going to be right at Masjid Rahman. It's not too far from here. A few minutes drive from here. And we're all going to meet there, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to see all of you guys there. If you haven't bought your tickets, you can find it on sale in the back. It's $50 for a family of 4 and $20 for an individual. So make sure that you get those, inshallah. It's sadaqah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.